Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, and I am joined by the legend, Bob Kravitz. After an eventful Pacers season, Pacers offseason, and also a newsworthy Kevin Pritchard press conference. So, Bob, how you doing? Thanks for coming to the show.
I'm a legend, huh? That means I'm really freaking old. Really,
No, I
really
think
old.
I think it's because of the Deflategate stuff. So thank God this isn't a Patriots podcast. Otherwise, they
Yeah,
might boo
thank
you.
God for that. Thank God for that.
So we were there yesterday and we had a chance to talk to Kevin Pritchard about the Myles Turner departure and Tyrese Halliburton's health going forward, things of that nature. But let's start with Myles Turner. What was your biggest takeaway from Kevin Pritchard meeting with us and sort of detailing that, throughout negotiations with Myles, he found out through social media that Myles had left to go to the rival Bucks?
Well, that was my biggest takeaway was the fact that Miles got the offer from Milwaukee, and he was under no obligation to do so, but he didn't feel that it was necessary to give the Pacers a chance to match or exceed that offer. Um, from what I was told, was Milwaukee made the offer, and 2 minutes later, uh, Miles took the gig in Milwaukee, and you could say that they uh, you know the, you could say that they didn't come up with a good enough offer, I guess, but they were under the impression that they were still negotiating, and the number the number that they were approaching him with was not necessarily going to be the final number. So, from what I was told, um, if he had given them the opportunity to match, they would have matched.
So the follow up to that, then, Bob, would be why was it even necessary to have to follow up? Like, why didn't the Pacers perhaps present the full number or the full offer initially?
Right,
And do you think
right.
that was part of the frustration with Myles? Because we know Myles' history in Indiana, 10-year veteran, consummate pro. I will definitely give him credit for that. But every year he was in trade rumors. Every year he
Yeah.
felt like he had to kind of prove his value or sort of, show the Pacers this is what I'm worth. Do you think that factored in at all to just finally say, hey, another team gave me the money up front right away, and I don't have to necessarily beg for it or prove anything?
That I think that's exactly it. I think, uh, we all like to be wooed.
Yeah.
We all like to be wined and dined. We all like to hear that we're the top columnists at the paper. We all like to hear that we're going to make more money that we didn't have to ask for. They
Right.
they just offered it, and so yeah, I don't blame Miles in the slightest for this decision. Would it have been nice for him to give them an opportunity to exceed or match? Sure. But I think after 10 years of always feeling like he's got to prove himself, he's sitting there saying, look, you didn't offer me 4 years, 100 and whatever it was, 107 million.
Right.
Your number was significantly lower than that. And I guess he just felt like this is an opportunity for me to take a next step to hopefully play with Giannis, assuming he doesn't get traded. Um, yeah, and it's understandable. It's totally understandable in my view that Miles got this offer and said the hell with it. They went out and gave DeAndre Ayton, what do you call that again?
It
The
was like a qualifying offer. It was a max
qualifying
deal,
offer.
essentially. And for
Right,
those who might have forgotten, this was when I was still on the beat. I want to say this might have been the summer of
22,
2022
22.
when they basically said to the entire world, hey, we're looking at your replacement and we're willing to pay this guy a lot more money than you ever.
Right, right.
And that was, and honestly, credit to Miles because even after that happened, and I believe Phoenix might have matched that
They did.
contract offer within the next hour, and I still to this day, Bob, I am still mad because I spent an hour rewriting this story about what does it mean to get DeAndre Ayton, all this stuff, and I had to scrap it because as soon as they matched it, I was like, "What the heck did I just waste all this time for?"
What was all that work for?
I know, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Look, if I was working for the Star and they threw a lot of money at another columnist to come in and replace me, I think I'd probably have an issue with that. You know, I mean, it was a significant offer sheet. That's the term I was struggling with before. Yeah, I don't blame Miles for feeling like he's not gotten the best opportunities from the Pacers. I mean, I think he feels like he's had to beg for the kind of money that he wants. Now, he's not a $30 million a year player, but I think you can make the argument that he's a $25 million player, and you get paid what you're worth, what somebody's willing to pay you. Is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say.
I always find that funny when and I think the fan base is kind of 50-50 on it like, hey, we wanted him back or hey, he didn't perform well enough in the finals. And that was one of the questions I wish I had a chance to ask Kevin yesterday when we were kind of breaking down things and obviously we're all going through what we think are the best questions in the moment. But the one I do want to ask, and I'm not saying he would even given us a real answer, but did the and I'll get into the other part of this question too. But one of the initial ones I had, Bob, was did his finals performance at all affect how they viewed his value? Because he struggled mightily in the
Yes.
finals, and that was well documented.
Yes. I don't think it did because, again, I think that if they had been given the opportunity to match or exceed, or at least match, I think they would have done it regardless of the way Miles played in the finals. So I don't think that had any impact on the decision whatsoever. I just think, look, I look back at my own situation where I was with the Star and Channel 13 came in with more money. And now I did give the Star an opportunity to match, which they did. And I just fell in love with the idea of not having to write on deadline anymore
Yeah.
and being on TV once in a while, despite the way I look.
Oh,
You
you're
know,
very handsome, Bob.
oh, very handsome. So, like I say, we all like to be told that we're wonderful and that we're in demand. And so, yeah, I don't blame Miles at all. And I hate the idea that he would be roundly booed when he comes back in here with Milwaukee, because all he did was take the most money that was offered. This idea that it was a betrayal or that it was greed is complete nonsense in my view.
No, this was probably his last chance to get
Yes.
a contract of this value, considering he's 29. But one of the questions to your point, Bob, that Kevin sort of sidestepped a bit was when I believe you followed up and might have kind of pressed him a bit and said, hey, or no, actually it was Dustin Dopirek, and he said, would the negotiations have gone differently had Tyrese Halliburton not torn his Achilles? And I think that is an interesting factor in all of this. And really, there's two Achilles tears at the center of this. I mean,
Yes.
Milwaukee isn't waving and stretching Damian Lillard, a future Hall of Famer, if he hadn't torn his Achilles, ironically, against the Pacers in, I
Right.
believe, the first round. And then you have Tyrese getting hurt. So do you think that affected negotiations at all? Just the fact that if you were to pay Myles Turner, he would come back to the Pacers, you will be paying at least that first year to go into the luxury tax to have a year where you don't have your main team, you don't have your main star out
Right.
there, and it's kind of a gap year. Do you think that factored into negotiations at all?
I don't. I don't. I think because they say, and it's easy for them to say it now,
Yeah,
obviously,
that's
but
true.
they say they were willing to go to that number that Milwaukee offered, and the fact that they were willing to do that supposedly tells me that they were looking 2 and 3 years down the line. I think they all understand that next year is the gap year. I think they can make the playoffs, but I think they'll be, fighting to stay out of the play-in. Honestly, I think they still have the culture. They still have Siakam, still have some really good players, and I think this Jay Huff to me sounds really intriguing. Really good shooter, big athletic guy. I think if you put three centers together, I think you can get the kind of production that you got from Myles. 15 points, 7 rebounds. Uh, but having said that, I don't think the injury, maybe it had an impact on their initial offer, and maybe they came in too low, and maybe he was insulted by that. But I tend to think they were just trying to do their due diligence, get the best deal they could to Myles. And like, Kevin said yesterday, he was completely dumbfounded. He was blindsided by this whole thing, especially because it was Milwaukee. There were other teams that had cap space, but they didn't think Milwaukee would be part of this process.
And honestly, I can't blame them. Like I can see both sides of it because on one side you could say, well, if you just paid him the money that he felt like he was worth or you said you would go to up front,
Right,
then you would have him. But on the flip side, the Bucks did something we've never seen in the history of the NBA.
right,
Like I think that needs to be stated once or twice or thrice, for that matter, because what they did is unprecedented. We've never seen a team waive and stretch a player with that much guaranteed money left on their deal. And to put it in perspective, I believe when the Pacers waived and stretched Monte Ellis, and it was so funny because my loan season on the Pacers beat full time in 2021-22 was the last year they paid Monte Ellis. But when they waived and stretched him, Bob, I want to say it might have been, I don't know, $11 million over 3 years or something like
right,
that. It
right.
wasn't 111, $112 million over five
Yeah,
years. Like this is
right.
crazy. And to that point, as we look at how Milwaukee's kind of shaping up with Turner coming into the fold, obviously trying to keep Giannis happy. How do you view what their front office did to try to keep their star happy? Because we've seen in recent years, although Milwaukee hasn't been able to get back to that championship level and hasn't won a championship since 2021, when things got a little antsy with Giannis before, they traded away Drew Holiday and brought in Damian Lillard. When he got a
Right.
little antsy again, they said, okay, bye, Damian Lillard. You're injured. We'll get rid of you. We'll have the largest waive and stretch provision in NBA history, and we'll bring in Myles Turner. How do you view just their desperation, or maybe it's ingenuity, however you
No,
view it,
it's
to try
it's
to keep their star
desperation.
happy?
It's desperation because they're giving Miles the idea that he can be the second option.
Mm-hmm.
That's something else I learned yesterday, that they went to him and said, we think you can be a second option on this team behind Giannis. And I think it's desperation because there's no guarantee that Giannis is going to stick around. So now, if he decides to bolt, or if he forces their hand, they're left with a very expensive center and not much else. So they're taking a very big risk here. If is Turner going to be enough for Giannis to feel like, oh, okay, we're heading in the right direction. We need to stay the course, stay in Milwaukee, and try to win with this group. Because I look at their team and they're not that good.
They're not. I mean, their roster is more or less identical than it was last year, just with
Right.
Myles Turner being a younger version and I believe a better player at this point in his career than Brook Lopez.
No
Outside
doubt.
of that, there hasn't been any other headlining moves. And honestly, when I look at the way Giannis's career has unfolded in Milwaukee and the talent around him, it kind of goes to show how finite some of these opportunities are. And I had this conversation with the Pacers as well. That opportunity that they had in Game 7, it could be, and hopefully it isn't for the fan base and for the team and for the front office. I don't care either way because I guess I do care. I would like to cover more finals games if I have an opportunity
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
But
We care a little.
yeah. In theory, though, you know, it's really hard to get back there. I think that is kind of what I'm getting at, Bob, where, you have these teams making desperate moves and desperate measures for a chance to get back there. And Giannis is great. He's a fantastic player, one of the all-time greats. But we're not even sure if this team can get out of the second round. Like, I'm looking at the
Right.
Bucks' roster. Are you sure this is enough? And much as I want to hear from Myles, who I believe is scheduled to speak within the next week or so
Hmm.
about this decision, I'd love to hear his side of things.
Yes,
I
me
want to
too.
hear from Giannis because
Yes.
he is the player at the center of all this. I want to hear from him. And to kind of pivot it back to the Pacers a bit, Bob, the one response that Kevin gave yesterday that was short, and all of his answers, he spoke to us for about 30 minutes,
Hmm.
was when Tony asked him, "Hey, how did Tyrese take the Myles Turner news?" And he said, "I'm going to keep everything private with Tyrese,
Right.
and I won't go there." And I respect that to a degree. But had they brought Myles back and you ask the same question about Tyrese, I think you get a little more there.
Oh
So
yeah.
I want to know, Bob, how does Tyrese feel? Because at the end of the day, you have to keep your star happy too. I know he's out for a year, but you got to come to him with some type of plan, some type of blueprint to say, we didn't just punt on our future to contend by getting rid of a very good player.
Right. Look, as you say, I think he's very good. I don't think he's indispensable. I think if you can make him, first of all, I don't know about you. I got the sense that Pritchard is going to be very active. With
I did,
or
I did feel that way a little bit because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, this guy, we spoke a little bit off to the side at the end,
Mhm.
and he was telling me, and I believe this isn't like something that's like, to keep under the cloak. But he's saying, I feel like I've done a decent job of
Yes.
retooling with this roster. And
Well,
in my
yeah.
mind, I'm like, you know what? Heck yeah, he probably deserves some credit there. So I'll let you continue your point, Bob. But yes, I do think that they are a team that, because of the injury and because of them still retaining more assets by not going into the luxury tax and not paying Miles all this money, they could be a sneaky team to make a move or two,
Yes.
whether it's, this year or next year, to try to put themselves back into title contention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No. You just going back to Giannis. I have heard through the grapevine that Giannis is not all excited about Myles Turner. Not that he doesn't want Myles Turner,
Yeah,
but that he's not going to be the guy that's going to make him say, "Well, now we're cooking with gas.
you're right.
Now we're getting somewhere." I think he's a really nice player, and he was a perfect fit here, despite the way he played in the finals. Um, but will that be enough to keep Giannis in Milwaukee? And if you're John Horst, the GM of the Bucks, where are you without Giannis? I mean, now you've got an expensive center who may have to be your first option. I mean, that could get real ugly real fast.
So let me throw this at you, and then we'll pivot it back to the Pacers. If you're John Horst, would you do it? Like, would you have done what he did if you were in his shoes?
No.
No. Okay. I think I would, Bob, because if it's in my mind, I'm thinking I'm doing all this to try to keep Giannis. And if it doesn't work, whatever. But at least I went for it to keep the star here. But I guess,
Yeah.
can you explain maybe why you wouldn't? Because telling a star like that no is a hard pill to swallow. And we've seen, both sides of it where it works out in your favor and sometimes it doesn't.
You're kind of talking me into it. You're kind of talking me into it.
I'm just
But
like, he's a top 20 player, top 25 player ever, possibly. Like,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
if
I,
Giannis says, "Hey, I want you to do this," now I don't even know if Giannis said, "I want you to do
yeah.
this,"
I mean, if
but it's
Giannis
such a unique move.
if Giannis said we need to do these things, I would. If I'm Horst, I'm saying okay, I will get it done. But to to wave and stretch Lillard, and basically they're spending almost $50 million a year
Yeah,
on Myles Turner. I think that's exorbitant, and he's not worth that kind of money. Is he worth 25, 26? Yeah, yeah. I mean, but to make this move and to wave and stretch Lillard, I think is that's getting out there.
yeah, it is out there, and I know you mentioned for the Pacers purposes, they will have Jay Huff, who they traded for from the Grizzlies.
Hmm.
Really had a breakout year last year, kind of been a journeyman in the NBA, but has some talent there. They're bringing back James Wiseman off the Achilles tear. They would like to bring back Isaiah Jackson. That is something that Kevin Pritchard kind of hinted at as
Yeah, that will
well.
happen.
And then they picked up the Tony Bradley option. So those are your four centers going into next season. And he was saying, hey, look, because of the gap year kind of setup, these guys will have an opportunity to play and kind of see where we're at with certain players. And I think a lot of it has to do with Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson and Huff as well, because you're younger. I mean, Tony Bradley, I would think he's your fourth string
Right.
guy, but that's not a horrible position to be in. I do think that it could get a little dicey there because none of these guys are really proven to be a starter at any level of their career or any point in their career. But this is a flyer season for this team. Now, the thing I want to kind of pick your brain about, Bob, beyond backup centers, who I love, and we'll get into all of that when the season starts back up here in a few months. But the other revealing thing that Kevin said was when he told us, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
had Tyrese play.
Yeah.
How did you view that? Because it's easy to say that now. I'm not even blaming Kevin Pritchard. I would absolutely agree with him. But in the moment, he kind of laid it out to us like it's hard. It's very hard to tell a
Yeah.
guy, you got all the way here, maybe you should sit down.
Right. And they thought they thought that they got out of this unscathed in Game 6, but
It was the best
they
case scenario, Bob. He played only
yeah,
23 minutes.
23 exactly didn't have to play, and they were told by the doctors, by the one guy who's
Dr. O'Malley.
O'Malley.
Yes.
Yes, he said a small chance that this could happen, but it could happen. And
Yeah.
I remember, after he got the calf injury, I wrote in my story, I said, this brings back memories of Kevin Durant,
Yeah.
and same damn thing happened, and it's a shame.
To be honest, Bob, if you go back and look at the play that Durant had and the play that Tyrese had, it's the same thing. Like both of
Same
them
thing.
came out cooking and they made a bunch of like set shots. But as soon as they planted to go
Mm.
around somebody, the Achilles ruptured. And obviously we saw the kind of graphic image of Tyrese banging his hand on the floor and then being carried off of the floor. But I loved his letter, him saying, I would do it 1,000
Yes.
times over for this city, for this team, do something special. And it, the storyteller in me, Bob, is like, I don't know if is it a better story if they win that game? It's a better story if they lose that game because it gave us all of the Hoosier vibes. I
Yeah.
was thinking of Bobby Plump, honestly, which is kind of what the movie's loosely based off of.
Oh
How
yeah.
many Bobby Plump shots did Tyrese Halliburton hit in these playoffs to have it end like that? But now that he is out for the season, and that was something that Kevin Pritchard confirmed. Do you think they will approach these injuries differently going
Yes.
forward?
I don't think there's any question, especially with a star player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I thought Pritchard made that abundantly clear that he wouldn't do it again. And look, he's in charge of this organization over the long term, and it would be interesting to see how Pritchard views all this, like in the moment.
Yeah.
You know, now it's easy to say, now you've already lost Myles. You got a gap year here. I don't know. I don't know, but that surprised me a little bit when he said that.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought it's pretty real for him to kind of come out and address that. And really, looking back at it, I was writing my story yesterday, Bob, after we spoke to Kevin, and I'm mentioning, okay, Damian Lillard, torn Achilles. Tyrese Halliburton, torn Achilles. Oh, yeah, they're bringing back James Wiseman. He tore his Achilles. They're bringing back Isaiah Jackson, he tore his
Isaiah
Achilles.
Jackson.
And I'm like, for one to have 4 Achilles tears mentioned in one story is kind of crazy. But for one team to
One
have
team.
3 players tear their Achilles, that was, I mean, that has to be someone just the worst luck possible. I don't know if there's like really injury data on it. But man, Bob, they literally had a player, and I thought about this, and maybe you can react in real time if you haven't thought about it like this. James Wiseman towards Achilles in the first game of the season.
Yes.
Tyrese Halliburton towards Achilles in the last game of the season. Like,
Right.
how do you have your seasons bookended by that? That was
Yeah.
just crazy to me.
Well, there were. I saw Adam Silver being interviewed, and he was saying that this year there were seven Achilles tears, and last year there was zero or one,
Yeah, there was none,
none. Yeah, yeah.
throughout
So,
this time. So
so
it's
and
tough.
Pritchard mentioned that they're gonna do some studies and see what. I think part of it, and this is just a guess on my part, um, is the heavy workload that these guys have as kids. I mean, when you're playing AAU and you're playing 2, 3 games a day and you're playing 5, 6 times a week, I think that's part of the issue is the incredible workload that these guys get early in their careers and playing so many games.
Yeah, I'll throw this out there. I don't know if it really fits with Lillard, but I know for Tatum and Tyrese, they had played so much basketball just as
Yeah.
adults. If you think about it, Tyrese basically played, almost 2 or 3 straight years of basketball. Like he did the World Cup, then they
Yes.
went on the run to the conference finals, then he went to the Olympics, and then he went back to the finals. Like that is no break basically for the better part of 2 years. And so unfortunate how it ended for them. But to end it on a more positive note, and I did this with Tony East a few weeks ago or a few days ago on the pod. What was your favorite Halliburton moment throughout the playoffs? And what was your favorite non Halliburton moment throughout what was a historic Pacers run?
Non Halliburton was the follow up dunk by Neesmith when
Against the
he came
Cavs?
against the
Oh,
Cavs.
yeah. Yeah.
And my favorite Halliburton moment was the shot at the choke game.
The
When
Knicks.
when he
Yeah.
hits the back of the rim and bounces straight up. You're way too young to remember Don Nelson, but Don Nelson was a great Boston Celtics player who hit a series winning shot that was exactly the same thing. Back rim, way high in the air, and comes through choke sign. It was beautiful. It was a great moment, and Reggie is there, and he's looking at Reggie, pointing at him. That was my favorite Halliburton moment. But there's so many to choose from. I mean, it's remarkable the run this team gave this city, and it's a lifetime worth of memories.
To be honest with you, Bob, that has been one of my biggest takeaways. And even hearing Kevin yesterday tell us, and you can feel free to share your thoughts, and I might be a little biased too. But when he told us, hey, I talked to Ty before game 7, and he looked at me and said, are you nervous? And he said, I didn't
Right,
want to tell him I was really nervous. I'd say I'm a little nervous. And Ty says, we got this. And he
we
comes out
got
and hits
this.
three threes. I mean, as much as Tyrese can frustrate the fan base because his play can fluctuate at times, I don't think it fluctuates to the degree that other people kind of say it does. Like, he's a pretty consistent player, but every now and then he does have a dud. It's like
Yeah,
once every series. But the dude came out swinging.
he
And
did.
Kevin said, I truly believe if he doesn't go down, we win game 7. Do you agree with that? Or do you
Yes,
think OKC wins it?
yes. I think if he stays healthy, it was just gut feeling more than anything else.
Yeah.
But the way they put them away wet in Game 6, I just thought they had all the momentum. They were playing great. Tyrese comes out and hits 3 bombs to start. I mean, what did Pritchard say? He had the eye of the tiger
Yeah.
that day,
Yeah.
and you could see it. And it's just boy, why we can't have nice things in this town? I mean, Oladipo, George,
Oh,
Peyton's neck, Richardson's shoulder. I mean, it's one thing after
yeah. It was like
another.
Andrew Luck, it like leaves in the prime of
Andrew
his
Luck. How
career.
can I forget Andrew
I
Luck?
know, I know. But honestly, though, Bob, aside from the injury and obviously how it ended in game 7, this had to be one of the most remarkable runs in all of sports, I would argue. And you've been around this obviously longer than me. But when you look at this run and we look up, 10 years from now, How do you think you'll remember what you witnessed? Because I think people haven't who weren't here to experience. I mean, it was. I think I did the math or counted the days.
Mhm.
It was like 64 days was how long their playoff run was.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a long time to be playing basketball. And there were so many runs in it or comeback wins and Aaron Nesmith in the Garden going crazy. The Thomas Bryant game against the Knicks. You
Thomas
know,
Bryant.
you all these moments where you're like,
Yes.
this isn't supposed to happen, and it is. So, I guess of all the remarkable things you've seen in sports, where would you? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. Where would you kind of rank this Pacers run?
Numero uno.
Wow, really?
Numero uno for professional sports. Now, I will say that Butler going to the championship game 2 years in a row,
Yeah,
that was out there. I mean, little Butler, 4,000 people, and
yeah.
so yeah, to me, it was the most remarkable run I've seen in professional sports without peer, without peer.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible stuff. So that's all I have for you for this episode. Shout out to Bob for joining me. You can check out his work because now he is an independent man. He's doing his own thing at the Musings of an Old Sports Writer. Make sure you subscribe, Bob. Like I said, I get your stories nice and early in the morning and maybe a little too candid for the pod, but I do read some of them on the toilet. So thanks for the morning reads.
It's funny because I write some of them there too.
There we go, man. So until next time, my friends, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for following along. And of course, as always, you can get the James Boyd podcast wherever you get your podcast. Until next time.